Welcome to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. Today is Thursday, the 17th of October, 2024. I'm Craig Resnik-Hanson, and today I'm joined by the editor and founder of Football Oranje, Michael Bell. We get into his love of the Netherlands, his expertise in Dutch football, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our chat with the one and only Michael Bell. Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Good to be on. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to get a handle on your story because from what I can hear in your accent, I'm not detecting a lot of, Louis van Gaal vibes. So I'm just curious as to how a Scotsman has such a huge love for Dutch football and the Netherlands national team. How did that sort of come about?
It's pretty simple. From my accent, you could tell I'm born and raised in Scotland, so Edinburgh. But growing up, my family's Dutch. So I've got my gran was born in the Netherlands, and a lot of my family was. So my dad spent quite a lot of time in the Netherlands, but he was born in Scotland. So growing up, I always supported Netherlands in tournaments. So because Scotland never got there, when you go to tournaments, you're always watching the Netherlands. Because I can remember, like, my earliest memories were, Euro 96, 98, Scotland were there, but get knocked out early. Holland's there playing football that you love to watch with, like, Dennis Bergkamp, Philip Cocu, all these sort of players. And then from there, it just sort of grew. And as Scotland didn't take part in any tournaments, it was the Netherlands that I watched, and then it's just a love for Dutch football, a love for the Eredivisie. I'm actually a Newcastle fan, but watching Newcastle play against teams like PSV and Heerenveen in the UEFA Cup, you get to see players like Huntelaar before he became the guy that he was. Just from a very young age, getting told about all the greats of Dutch football from my dad. I guess I'm a sucker for punishment because I've picked the Netherlands and Newcastle, who both don't win any trophies since I've been born. So it's great fun.
At least Scotland have been doing a little bit better in the last couple of tournaments. Has that changed anything for you in terms of your preference for the Netherlands when it comes to the tournaments, or are you more 50-50 on it now that Scotland are appearing a lot more?
No, I'd say I'm more 70-30. Still, Netherlands are the ones that I cheer on most. When Scotland's playing a game in a tournament, I'll watch it. But I don't get that sort of feeling that I get when Netherlands play, like, when you watch your team that you love and they have a result like when Netherlands beat Spain 5-1, and that just like stays with you for days and weeks and months, and you can watch it over and over again. Don't get that with Scotland. If Scotland lose, I go, it's disappointing, but I'm not like down for days. Whereas when Netherlands lose, like, I'll have a rant because we have like a podcast we do that post match, and you have a rant and you feel about it, but it sticks with you until like the next international break, and you can get it out of your system. So I think that's when when you support a team or a country, if they make you sad when they lose, that's when you know that that's the one that you support the most, and that's what Netherlands is for me.
And on club level, it would be Newcastle that is that for you. Do you have that same connection?
Yeah.
Maybe not as strong as with the Netherlands, but you feel it.
Yeah, Newcastle's my one love in football. That's that's the first team I ever started supporting.
How did that come about?
I think early days. My first football memories were like '96. So when you think about the Newcastle team back then, it was
Shearer, Asprilla,
Keegan, Genoa. So that's
yeah.
Being born in like Edinburgh. Like, my dad's like a Hearts fan, but like he's not like diehard Hearts fan, so he doesn't like go to games or anything like that. He's just sort of like, if I had to pick a team, it'd be Hearts. But Scottish football just never grabbed me, and then it was more the Premier League that I'd watch, and the Newcastle side, '98. That was one that really drew me in. So from then becoming a Newcastle fan, and I'd like to say it's been a great time, because obviously I started supporting them when they were good, and it hasn't stayed that way. But they're my team, so I'll stick with them for thick and thin.
And so the Newcastle stuff may be a bit before the Netherlands love really blossomed, but not too much before, I guess, if it was still, Euro 96 and that kind of time. When did you start watching the Eredivisie closely? Were you doing that as a youngster? And if so, how? How easy was that to do?
With the Eredivisie, it wasn't easy. There was programs that would show highlights. I think there was a program, I don't know if it's still on, called Trans World Sport. It used to be on like a Saturday morning, like 7
I
a.m.
remember that. That was an awesome show.
Yeah, and it used to show the highlights from the league, so you'd see that. And good old teletext, or CFAX as some people call it. Um, you used to be able to show the results from the European leagues through that. And then, yeah, it was really when the internet came around and became more useful in terms of watching games and keeping up with games that you would sort of be able to do that in Champions League games when you see like or UEFA Cup games. That's when you'd see teams playing against Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord, and Newcastle playing against them all. Like the Newcastle game that they beat Feyenoord 2-1 with a last minute goal. Like that sort of thing. That's when you sort of see these teams. But yeah, like from really an early age until like maybe late teens, it was mainly through like European competitions or watching the big tournaments that you keep track of these players. And when you're playing like FIFA or like Champman, I would go as Ajax, Feyenoord, PSV, and then learn from players from that, and then you see them joining the national team from there, and that's always fun. So yeah, it was hard to keep track of the Eredivisie when I was young because it just wasn't on anywhere. But yeah, the little bits I could keep up with receive facts and for the internet.
Yeah, I mean, that was the case even for the quote, bigger leagues, even when Serie A was like arguably the biggest league in Europe.
Yeah.
It was still, Gazzetta Football Italia. That's how we were keeping track of it. But it's a lot easier now on the whole to
Mm.
follow pretty much everything. With the Eredivisie, is it still on TNT Sports? Is it? Can you watch quite a few games?
Um, for me, it isn't on TNT Sports. It's on like a website. It's like a free website. I can't remember what it's called. But with sort of top leagues, the best. It's not great watching it that way, but through some of the betting apps, you can watch all the games there. So even
Oh
if you've
yeah,
got
that's
like
true.
you've got 10,
Bet365 have
yeah,
got it, haven't they? I think.
yeah. So like if you've got 10 pence in your account, I'm not a big gambler, but if you've got 10 pence in your account, you can watch all the games. So yeah, that's the easier. No commentary or anything like that, but there's no way on any sort of broadcast channel that you're going to be able to watch Herenveen against NAC Breda. So yeah, that's the only way you can kind of do it from the UK.
And I know that you are obviously not just a fan, you are the founder and editor of, am I saying this right? Is it Football Orange?
Football Oranje.
Oranje, that's it,
Yeah.
because obviously my Dutch is non-existent. Oranje. So you're, working on it in a much more of a journalistic capacity as well now, not only as a fan. But do you have, you don't even have to say, but do you have a league team in the Netherlands that interests you more than the others, or that you sort of root for a little bit?
No, see, we always get told, running a website that, you report on these teams that you get fans of some of the clubs that say that you're biased towards this team, biased
Yeah.
towards this. So it changes all the time. Like some people say, oh, you're definitely Feyenoord fans or you're definitely PSV fans. But the way that I look at it, and this is the way that I've always looked at it, is I'm a Netherlands fan. And I want to see the teams that have got the best players that are going to eventually become Netherlands internationals do well. Um, so that's what I look out for. I'm not rooting for one team in particular. I like them all. Like it's more the players that they've got at that stage that I follow, whereas not the teams. So like the Ajax team that had Frankie de Jong, Matthijs de Ligt, that was the team that I was watching most when that was there. But now I'd say I watch more PSV because they've got more players that are in the national team. So yeah, for me, I want all Dutch clubs to do well. There's not one that I am rooting for the most. It's more the Dutch players that could go into the national team that I'm rooting for. So yeah, there's not one that I support, even though
Yeah,
a lot of people would
it
say,
makes total sense.
yeah,
Are you still are you based in Edinburgh right now?
yeah, I live in Edinburgh, so that for me probably will never change. Edinburgh's the place that I grew up in. It's a place that I love. So yeah, this is where I'll probably stay.
Have you had the pleasure of watching some Eredivisie games or Netherlands games?
Yeah. I've been to Feyenoord, PSV, and Ajax games, and I've been to a few Netherlands internationals. So, yeah, it's not as easy to get. Well, it is quite easy, to be fair. It's only like an hour journey to there on a plane. So it's not like you're having to travel half the world to get to these games. So, but yeah, it's now and then if I go over to, say, the Netherlands, I'll look for a game that I can go see. But yeah, lucky to have been to Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord games and a couple of Netherlands internationals.
Now, obviously, it's no reflection on it's just a personal opinion. It's no bias towards any club or another, whatever. But um, which match day experience would you say is getting it the most right for their fans in terms of Ajax's ground, Feyenoord's ground, PSV's? Which one did you enjoy the most? Which one do you think is doing the best job for their fans?
Feyenoord have the reputation as being the ground to go to. The Kuip is a brilliant stadium. If you're in there, the atmosphere is brilliant. That's why a lot of people want that to be sort of the Netherlands base. Because the crowd, the stadium, the layout, the atmosphere is probably the best in the Netherlands. So I would say being able to watch a Feyenoord game in the Kuip was a great experience. Sadly, it finished 0-0, but yeah, I'll take that away as being the one that I'm glad that I got to see.
Where do the Netherlands play then? Is there a separate national stadium, or are they playing at Ajax's place, or how does it work?
It switches between them, mostly
Ah, okay.
for the big games. So, say Netherlands were hosting France or Germany, you usually see it at Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam because it's the biggest one. So they'd want to pack in as many fans as possible. So that's the one. But the best atmosphere and the best record for the national team is at Feyenoord's ground. And then for smaller internationals, they sort of take it on tour. So you see it popping up in Eindhoven or Enschede for smaller internationals. But yeah, it's usually between Amsterdam and Rotterdam, but the preference usually is Amsterdam.
England used to do that when I was a kid, and it was brilliant. They used to go to Old Trafford, Villa Park. I don't know if maybe
Yeah.
they've started doing it a little bit more again, but it seemed like for the longest time it was just Wembley every single time.
Mm.
And I like that idea of moving it around. But okay, cool. So, but have you managed to see Scotland play the Netherlands at all? Has that come up? Has that fixture happened since you've been following? Maybe even on TV. Has it been something that you've been able to watch?
Yeah, there's been a few matches between the two over the years. It's I remember when I was young, there was actually I think it was a European Championship playoff between the two, and I've got a feeling that Scotland won 1-0 at home, and then the away leg was a 6-0 hammering. Um, the Netherlands won, but yeah, they've played each other a few times recently as well. I think there was a 1-0 win in Aberdeen. I think Memphis Depay scored the winner. Um, but yeah, it's not like when there's a Scotland Netherlands game that I'm having to like battle my family or anything like that. I think my family all know that it's Netherlands first. Even my dad, having spent a lot of time in Netherlands, when Netherlands win, he's just like, yeah, that's expected. So yeah, it's not as big an occasion as you're thinking like, oh, it's going to be like heart wrenching, being like, oh, I can't go against Scotland. Yeah, like when Scotland play Netherlands, I'm still hoping that Netherlands win because if it's a competitive game, they've got a lot more chance of going far in tournaments. So yeah, I want to see the Netherlands win a tournament more than I don't want to see Scotland. Sadly,
Now, you're not a big lover of necessarily the Scottish League game, I guess. You don't necessarily follow a particular team, but have you been to any Hearts games or Rangers or Celtic games or Hibs games or anything like that?
so when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to a couple of Hearts games, but yeah, for me, Scottish football just doesn't grip me. Like it is it's a two-team league. Like right now, it's probably a one-team league where Celtic just
Yeah.
hammer everyone. And the standard of football for me and the standard of the crowds. Like I remember as a youngster going to a Hearts game, and all it was people swearing at the players for 90 minutes, and I was just like, what is this like? And then you go to like a game in the Netherlands, and it's a great atmosphere. There's drummers, there's like tifos, there's flares, there's like all this amazing crowd atmosphere, but you just go to a Scottish game and it's just you get a terrible pie and you swear at the players and that's it. The standard of football was pretty poor. I've not been in years. Maybe it's improved. I've got a lot of friends who obviously go to Hearts games and Hibs games and they support them ferociously. But yeah, it's just not for me. I'd love it to be I'd love to be in a city where my local team is the one that I support. But yeah, you support who you support, and for me, it's Newcastle and Netherlands. And Newcastle isn't that far from Edinburgh anyway, so it's just a train ride down. Um, but yeah,
Have you been to St James's Park as well then?
yeah, about 5 or 6 times. There's a
That
lot.
must be a little bit more rewarding than being at is it Tynecastle,
Yeah,
Artist Place?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's very different. You go into St James's Park and the size of it and the atmosphere to go into Tynecastle.
And very supportive fans, right? From I don't know if that's a stereotype, but from what we hear, because in England it's just the same as what you described at Hearts. I mean, I follow my local team in the fourth division, and it's like you said, you just get a bad pie, negative, negative, swear at the players the whole time. And I think no matter the size of the club, that's the case too. I'm sure there are some exceptions, but in the Premier League too, I've been to games, Man City games, Aston Villa games, loads of different teams, and yeah, it just seems like it's just sort of like hate, hate, hate. And then
yeah,
I've seen games on the continent, and it's a lot more of a sort of, the first port of call is creating a good atmosphere, getting behind the team. You can, of course, be critical, but it
mm,
feels like that's not kind of the whole point of it. In England, it feels a bit like it is. But in Newcastle, from what I hear, it's a little bit more sort of European in that sense that they actually get behind the team.
yeah. There's a lot of. I think the atmosphere at St James's Park and the you've seen it with the flags that we now have, war flags doing, and the tifos that they do, and so the chants that have stayed around for years. They still sing like Colaccini songs and Alan Shearer songs. So yeah, it's I think that the Newcastle atmosphere is one of the best in Premier League. It is loud as that. I'm not just being biased. When you can look on social media, a lot of people do say the Newcastle atmosphere is one of the best, and it is supportive. There is negativity, there's negativity at the moment because they're not playing very well. But overall, I'd say that it's up there with European. I've been to games in Italy, been to games in Spain, in Germany. That's the atmosphere that I like. Whereas if you go to, I do think it is pretty poor when you go to Scotland and England games, and it's just swearing and like, yeah. Obviously, there's problems in these countries because there's racist chants, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
Scotland and England are just mainly just people swearing at the players for 90 minutes.
Nowhere's perfect, but I feel like the Spanish football I've watched because of the places I've lived has usually been more lower league, so I haven't seen that sort of top echelon. Packed stadiums. It's been a lot sort of emptier, but still kind of like a nice experience. But my wife is German, and therefore my daughter is half German, so I go to Germany a lot, and the local team of my wife's family is Stuttgart, so we go to the Mercedes-Benz Arena a lot,
Mm.
and there that the atmosphere is just incredible, and there's a lot of differences I think between I guess you would say British fan culture and maybe it sounds like Germany and Netherlands are on a lot more the same kind of wavelength, the way they go about things. Are there any other sort of differences or similarities that you've noticed aside from the way the fans look at the game in terms of the match day experience?
I think the match day experience is different in what city you're in because, like Eindhoven, if you would go to see a game for PSV, what I liked about that was you get the train to Eindhoven. It's a smaller city, there isn't much to do, but you come off the train and the stadium's right there. It's right slap bang in the middle of the centre, which is kind of like Newcastle. You get off a train and you're like a 5 minute walk, and the stadium's right there. Um, in terms of the crowd in the Netherlands, you've seen it during the European Championships. For a Netherlands game, there's the walk to the stadium where they
Oh yeah,
all
the
get
big
together.
orange
Yeah, it's called the Orange
like
March.
river.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they all sing the same song. It's basically just to the left and to the right. That's what they sing, which is Narlinks, Narex. And it's just a big party atmosphere, and that continues in the stadium. They all dress in orange. There's a few fans that are famous for wearing like orange like army suits and stuff like that. Like I think that sets the Netherlands aside from most countries in terms of pre-match atmosphere of you all get together before the game and you all march towards the stadium and it's a good atmosphere. And there's not like there is trouble, but like in some Dutch club football, like Ajax fans are sort of renowned for being quite tough. But I think when it comes to Netherlands, there's sort of a party atmosphere, and you take that when there's a big tournament on. If the Netherlands are missing from a big tournament, I don't think you see what you see when they are there, like that Orange March. I think everyone watching the Euros would have said that that was one of the highlights of the tournament, seeing those fans all getting together, that sea of orange, just all having a great time in the party. Um,
Yeah, they are missed. Like Scotland, to be fair. That's another one that people always say that it's a lot better having them there than not.
yeah,
And I
but
think the same for the Dutch.
yeah, the problem with Scotland is when you watch them on the news, um, and they had the European Championships, and they're like, oh, you've not been in a tournament for years. We were there the last one, but oh, what are you gonna do? And it's just, it seems to just be like there's a sort of, oh, all they're gonna do is go to the pub and drink, and that's it. Like that seems to be the
Yeah.
stereotype is, oh, Scotland fans are here, they're great because all they're doing is in the pub, and they're there from like 8 o'clock in the morning, getting drunk, and it's kind of like there's more to it than that. There should be more to it. There's, like if I'd rather Scotland had something similar where they all get together and like march towards the stadium and like have like bagpipes and kilt stuff like that, like all waving the Scotland flag. That would be for me more. But like for me, I think there's a stereotype of Scottish fans. It's just like, oh, it's a party because we'll all just be in the pub having a good time hours before kickoff. And then yeah, by the time the game actually starts, half of them are drunk and then they don't really notice the terrible football that's happening on the pitch. So yeah, that's
One thing I've noticed between, which I know it's a pretty easy observation to make, but one difference I've noticed between English football and German football, and I'm sure the same is the case. England and Scotland is probably similar on this, is pricing and affordability of the matchday experience. So you can go to a game in Germany. I mean, when I last season when Stuttgart were flying and they were in the Champions League places, I'm still paying like a fraction of not that much more than I pay to watch fourth division English football. What's that like in the Netherlands? Is there a similar sort of attempt to respect the fans and make the game affordable, not only in terms of tickets, but also everything else that goes along with the matchday experience? So you don't have to, remortgage your house or, not send your kids to uni so that you can go to a game. Is that sort of, is there a positive move in that direction like there is in Germany?
I think Germany is renowned as being the best. Like the ownership structure that they have in Germany isn't the same in the Netherlands. So you don't have fans having a part of it and then keeping prices as low as possible. I do still think that the pricing in the Netherlands is high, and there's certain game or certain teams. Like, so say if you want to go see a Feyenoord home game, you're going to struggle to get tickets because of the amount of season ticket holders there are for Feyenoord. Because Rotterdam, there is other clubs in Rotterdam, but it is mainly just a one club city of Feyenoord is a big club. So if you're trying to see a home game, so say if you turned up on a day and you're like, oh, if Feyenoord are playing today, let's try and get a ticket. They'd be like, no, it's been sold out. And then you're trying to go on, like ticket websites and paying hundreds of euros for tickets. So I don't think the culture in Netherlands is the same in Germany in terms of affordable tickets. I think if you wanted that, you'd have to go down to the second division or the lower league teams like the NAC Bredas, the Pegs Vollers. They'll be cheaper, but you're still looking at upwards of 50, 60 euros for a ticket for a game.
And maybe if you're on a weekender in Rotterdam, you need to be trying to target Sparta.
Yeah, exactly. Or Excelsior. And then you've got Excelsior, a tiny club. You've only got like a 2,000 seater stadium that they can't even fill most of the time. So yeah, that's the sort of clubs that you look for. And tickets are harder to come by as well because for the bigger clubs, they try and you used to be able to in Amsterdam, you turn up and then you just go to ticket office and buy some tickets. But like I think they're sort of trying to clamp down mainly on fan violence and try to stop certain people to getting into the stadiums in the Netherlands. So tickets are kind of harder to get. But it's the same now in England. Like trying to get a ticket for a Newcastle game now is now on nearly impossible because you've got to sign up, you've got to have points, you've got to have this, you've got to go into a ballot. There's all these sort of restrictions on trying to get tickets now. Whereas like this is kind of similar for Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV if you don't go down the route of getting them off of like Via Gogo or something like that. Yeah, it's more the lower clubs that are more accommodating to allow you to come up to stadiums and buy tickets, whereas the bigger ones are sort of clamping down on it, which means it's harder.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's quite similar to a lot of places because the situation in in Spain, I don't know about the busyness in terms of getting tickets, but the pricing is the same. It's kind of like in England that you're paying like, 25 euros for like third tier teams, second tier teams. So, which I don't think is necessarily appropriate, but good on Germany for what they're doing in that regard.
Yeah,
Maybe one day the Eredivisie and the Premier League. I don't see it coming,
no.
but maybe they could adopt the 50+1 rule one day. That would be a dream. Of the matches that you have been to, Feyenoord, PSV, Ajax, the Netherlands national team, which one sticks out as being your favorite, and who did they play against and what happened in the match and why did it have such an impact on you?
In terms of games that I've watched, you always think back to the first time that you watch your team. So like in terms of the first game I have a great memory of is my dad taking me to Newcastle. That was great, and I got to see Alan Shearer score. That was like the memory that sticks with me most. Sadly, they lost 2-1 against Chelsea, but just bypass that. In terms of Netherlands, the most entertaining game that I've seen in Netherlands, because I've seen them win 5-6-0 against the teams like Luxembourg, and it was nice to see like Arjen Robben score and Manchester United. The one that was probably the most entertaining, but in a bad way, was back in the sort of time that they were missing out on tournaments. They missed out on Euros because they lost their last game, which was a 2-3 home defeat against Czech Republic. And the atmosphere for that game going into it was massive because they needed to win. The crowd really got behind them. We all had clappers, and it was a ferocious atmosphere in the actual stadium. And then when the game got going, it was back and forth constantly. And I remember seeing I'm a big fan of Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, so I got to see him scoring. Robin van Persie scored at both ends. He actually scored an own goal, and he scored at the other end. We got to see the first sort of glimpse of Memphis Depay as well on the left. So that game sticks out to me as being one that had a big impact on Dutch football, because at that time that was sort of going into the sort of dark period that they had where they were missing tournaments. And then that sort of clocks of players that we've seen doing so well in 2010, such as Van Persie, Huntelaar, Sneijder, and Robin were all coming to an end. So it's one of the last times you got to see them play for Netherlands. But in terms of entertainment, that was the game that sticks out to me the most. In terms of league games, I've seen Ajax lose at home to ADO Den Haag. I've seen them beat AZ Alkmaar. I've seen PSV beat AZ Alkmaar. And then the Feyenoord game, even though it was a great atmosphere, it was a 0-0 draw against PEC Zwolle. So, yeah, they weren't the greatest watches, but that Netherlands-Czech Republic game 2-3 was something else.
Let's do a little bit about the on the pitch stuff as far as Das Oranje are concerned. What's the current state of the Dutch national team? Assume that you're talking to someone who doesn't follow international football pretty much at all, apart from when there's big tournaments. Knows very little about what's going on, including England. I'm just not really into it until the Euros and the World Cup come around. That's the honest truth. What's going on with the Netherlands right now? Is it a good time or a bad time to be a Netherlands fan?
I think it's hard because you look at the latest Euros, and if you were an outsider looking in, you see that Netherlands got to the semi-final and narrowly lost to England, and you'd think, oh, that's a good tournament. Like, they've got to the semi-final, they must have played well. But if you actually look at the games that Netherlands played, they struggled a bit, and it was kind of like limping towards the semi-final. They got a good draw, they got past teams that they should have beat. The one time that they got played off the pitch was by Austria. And then in that game against England, they sort of took the lead and then capitulated. And then since then, it's not been great. The Nations League games that have been recently, most recent fixtures, they drew 1-1 away against Hungary. Really bad performance. Van Dijk got sent off. They looked terrible on the pitch. And then the most recent game was a 1-0 loss to Germany, which, nothing wrong with losing 1-0 to Germany, but when you consider that it's basically Germany's B team, and the score really at the end should have been about 5-0 to Germany. It was that one-sided. It's not a great watch, and the majority of fans, I would say, that I've seen are starting to turn on Ronald Koeman and the KVB to try and sort it out, because we are a nation that has been starved of trophies. The last one they won was 1988, So in my lifetime, they've not won anything. And
Especially when you consider the kind of squads that we're talking
yeah,
about. I mean, there's been multiple occasions where the squad has been definitely top three in that tournament.
yeah. And even now, if you look at the squad that they've got, the defence, I would say is one of probably the best defences in international football.
Absolutely.
You got Van Dijk there. You've got the players coming through like Mickey van de Ven can do it week in, week out in the Premier League. Uh, you've got one of the best right backs in attacking in a national sense in Denzel Dumfries. Midfield, you've got some of the best midfielders around right now. Like Ryan Gravenberch has been lauded as being one of the best midfielders in the Premier League this season. You've got Frankie de Jong coming back, Tunku Miners, not Juventus. You think that there should be a squad there that's good enough to challenge, but they don't have a manager that's good enough. So I'm kind of jealous this morning that you see that. I know it's controversial, but England have appointed
The Thomas Tuchel, yeah.
Tuchel, and it's like that's for me is like a forward thinking approach from the FA of being like, look, it doesn't matter what nationality the coach is, as long as they're a good coach, they're going to come in and win something. Whereas the KNVB are like,
Do they have that hang up too then about is the manager, has there been a non-Dutch one
not
ever?
since not since the early 70s. Like when you think of the 74 team that had Johan Cruyff in it, the Netherlands then had German coaches, Austrian coaches, English coaches.
Ah,
But since like modern times, it's always been Dutch, and they always go for a recycle. Dick Advocaat does it 3 times, Guus Hiddink twice,
yeah.
Ronald Koeman
Van
twice,
Gaal.
Van Gaal 3 times. It's always the recycling of the same names,
I can
and
understand that it's like it's not that shocking in a way that they've had all Dutch because the country does produce some amazing coach. I mean, all the people you mentioned there are greats of the game, but at the same time, if you keep recycling them 2 and 3 times, it shows that maybe the
yeah,
depth isn't there. They are really good, those four, but like, do we need only those four in the last 40 years or whatever?
yeah, and that's why when you don't win and then you see other nations doing well, and the thing that I want to see more from the KNVB is promoting from within. So like you've seen what happened with Spain. They've got a great under 17, under 19 coach who goes to under 21s, does well, and then he goes to the national team, and then he brings success he's had with the youth through and does it well. Whereas the KNVB are more like, oh, who's the big name Dutch coach that we can get at the moment?
Mm,
There's not a plan. And Ronald Koeman he's not a tactical man. He doesn't know tactics. He's never been that guy. He's more of I'd say more of a people person. And usually it's his right hand men on the bench that are the tactics guys. But right now for the Netherlands national team, he has his brother and he has Wim Jonk, who isn't widely renowned as a tactical guy. He had a brief spell in charge of a small Dutch club called Volendam, where he played kamikaze attacking football. So yeah, it's a worrying time, I'd say, to be a Netherlands fan because under Ron Koeman's recent term, they've not won against what you would call a top nation. So the England, France, Italy, they've been losing those games, and they're being beaten the likes of like the Bosnias and the smaller nations, and it's sort of seeing them get through without getting much criticism. Whereas he does need criticism because what we're seeing from the players that should be playing really well is not great, and I think the attitude is starting to creep in that the players aren't even listening to him now. So in the most recent game, he was on the touchline absolutely screaming at Xavi Simons, and Xavi Simons was not listening to anything that he was getting told to do. He was doing whatever he wanted, but Xavi Simons didn't get taken off the pitch. So it's kind of like, is there player power there? It's the egos or the dressing room leaders over the coach, because Van Dijk is another one. So under Louis van Gaal, they play 5-3-2, and that was his way. Van Dijk turned out and said, "Well, I don't like playing that way. I want to play 4-3-3." And as soon as Koeman comes in, it's back to 4-3-3, and the results aren't there. And it's kind of like, is he too scared to annoy Van Dijk, who's sort of threatened to retire after the most recent Euros? So, yeah, I'd say it's a worrying time to be a Netherlands fan because they've got the players and they've got the players coming through, but the coaching setup is not great, and it doesn't seem like the KNVB are interested in making a change anytime soon.
Well, as a neutral, let's hope they do because I think the Netherlands are usually well liked, I think, by neutrals. Like they've always produced wonderful players in depth, tons of them. There's never a lack of talent, and like you said, the fan base is great. It's a country I think that you like to see, like Italy. I think you hate to see them not qualifying or going out in the quarters or something. They should be right up there at the end, as one of the sort of great nations of the game. But hopefully that can pick up for you, Michael. But nonetheless, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, hearing your stories about Newcastle, about Netherlands, and about Dutch football. Thank you so much for coming on. Could you tell our listeners how they can check out your writing and your other work?
Yeah, so the website is Football Oranje. You can check that out on X. We do have a YouTube as well. So if you're interested in Netherlands national team, we usually do previews and post-match reactions to any of the games that Netherlands played. There's also some Eredivisie shows as well on the YouTube. So yeah, the website, X, and YouTube. Just type in Football Oranje, you'll find us there.
I'm doing that right now as we speak. Okay, Michael, thank you so much, and all the best for the rest of the season for all the teams that you hold close to your heart.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. It was such a pleasure speaking to Michael, and we can't wait to bring you more chats with fans from across the footballing landscape, from ex-pros to bloggers, YouTubers, journalists, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. If you really liked it, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. That will help us out so much. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on the Sporticos Football Stories podcast.